this work, but life also gets in the way. So we're going to record this so that can be shared. Thank you very much for coming along. And as I was saying, what we're doing at the moment is a series of webinars that focus on topics that have been particularly of interest to our partners in research and our rich voices. So our people with lived experience that have been working with us in Enrich Scotland and in the Neuroprogressive and Dementia Network. And we are very lucky to be joined by Alyson today, who this webinar started from a bit of a Twitter stalk, I think was actually how it started, where I saw a fabulous picture of the work that Alyson was going to tell us a bit about, and decided that we had to tell people about it, had to speak to the group about the work that was going on. And we've been developing some research ideas that explore different ways to help communicate with people and tell their story. And this the approach that we're going to learn more about today is a prime example. It's also been one of those things that once you find out about these things that work well, you end up telling everyone you know. So I've had friends go into care homes that they work in and try this activity out with their residents, which is always lovely to hear and to know more about. So anyway, I will stop talking and let you hear much more about all of this from Alyson, and we will take questions either in the chat or at the end of the talk. You can put your hand up and mute. For the sake of the recording and just making it easier presentation wise, if you could mute yourself while Alyson's talking. But as I say, we're on the chat, or you can raise your hand. That should be everything. So I'll hand over to you, Alyson, if that's okay.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. And it's nice to see some familiar faces and some people I know. So hello. I am very lucky that Sarah is with us today as well, who was the official sort of artist in residence for this project. So she's going to be chatting a little bit about it with me today. Now, unfortunately, when I put the slides on, I can't see everyone's faces. So hopefully you guys can see those slides okay. Is that all right? Grand.
Yeah, we can see them from here. Yeah.
Thank you. Perfect. So yeah, this was basically just to tell you a little bit about the team. So obviously it's myself. My name is Alyson Vale. For those of you who don't know me, I am Business and Operations Director of Abbotsford Care, which is a family-run care home group based solely in Fife. And I come to the table as having previously worked in theatre and the arts, and always really passionate and interested about how we can integrate and weave in creative opportunities for our residents into our everyday everyday life. So we also have Sarah with us, and Sarah is the Timeslip certified facilitator who was leading the sessions. Some of the things we're going to talk about today, obviously artists and residents sort of style, working with the care home teams to make the project happen. So I just wanted to kind of share a little bit about how things went, what the project was and how it started. And then obviously it would be great if people have got specific questions that we can kind of cover that a little bit at the end, hopefully. So in the same way that Rosie said this kind of started a bit like a Twitter stalk, it was exactly the same for me, really. I had seen, I think probably Kirsty from Rashalee had posted about this amazing book, Creative Care Imagination Kit. And I was like, oh, that looks great. I'm going to have to go and buy that. And anyone who doesn't know me, I am dyslexic. I don't really kind of read a lot. I'm much more about like finding sound bites almost in the books that we get, and this tweet sums up. I had bought a lot of these books pre-loved online, and I might have got a little bit carried away with the number that I had, and they definitely have not all been read front to cover, front to back, but it was the spurring me on of different kind of ideas and different things to take forward. And so when I had seen the Creative Care Imagination Kit, I was like, oh, this is fantastic. This is a really, really interesting resource. And how can I use these resources and these practices in our services? And what's next, and where can we take it, and how and where can it grow further? So I kind of came up with this concept, this idea, and I went on a proper rabbit hole kind of scrolling session, trying to find more information about this Timeslip certifying training. Could I get training for my staff? How could I do this? And again, probably spent a bit more time than I actually had scrolling the internet, trying to find different ways in which we could make this happen in our services. And I just happened upon the fact that Sarah, one of these Timeslip certified facilitators, because there's a beautiful website that has all the information about who the Timeslip certified facilitators are, lived in Leven. And I was like, what, in Fife? Like, somebody in Fife is already doing this work, and I had no idea, and I have never met them. So all I did that day was take Sarah's email address and send a very random message saying, hello, you're in Fife, I'm in Fife, we should get together and have a conversation. And the picture that's on this slide, where you can kind of see me and Sarah, who had just met each other at a beautiful venue in Fife, which is an old church and a very creative, lovely venue. And it was the first meeting that we had, and absolutely we knew at that point it was like meeting kindred spirits. We had a lot of the same background, a lot of the same experiences, and it was absolutely fantastic to be able to think about how we could turn this initial meeting and conversation into something much bigger that could be supporting staff. So that's when we kind of developed our mission, which was all about using the Timeslip storytelling resources to create experiences for residents, but really focusing on those as well, end products and events which people could continue to feel connected to. So what I'm going to do now is hand over to Sarah, and she can tell you a little bit more about the specifics of the project, how it was, what we did, and how it worked. Yeah, Sarah, I'll hand over to you.
Okay, hello. I hope you can hear me, because I've had mic troubles today. But as long as you can hear me, we can set off. What's interesting is that book, the Imagination Kit, was written by a woman called Anne Basting, and she is the woman that created the Timeslips storytelling technique and started the whole organisation. And I think it's perfect if you're looking at research, because that's where it came from. She was an artist. Did a lot of writing, did a lot of performance stuff, which is where Alyson and I slot right in. But what she was finding was, working with people living with dementia, they were finding these barriers all the time when you butt up against having to remember and having to be consistent and doing all of these things. And what she did with creating this is replace the pressure to remember with the freedom to imagine. And if you hold that in your head, it's so beautiful. If you hold that in your head, that's where we came in. And what we decided to do, once I'd done the training in 2018, then I moved to Scotland, and then the world closed down. So I never really got to do the thing. So having this email from Alyson was perfect. And I went to every single Abbotsford home over a crazy month of April last year. And we just told stories, and the technique works like this. Basically, you create a sense of occasion, a sense of wonder. We are all here, we're all storytellers, and we're going to tell a story. And we don't know what it's about yet, because it doesn't exist yet. But it wouldn't exist unless we were all here in this room. And you start to get the little bit of the hairs sticking up on top of your head. Everyone feels valued. Everybody contributes. And we pick a picture from all of these resources that I've got as a Timeslips facilitator. But basically, you need a picture that is striking, that is begging to tell the story. Everyone can see it. Everyone's got the same information, but everyone has a different interpretation of what they can see, and everything is valid. And the big trick with this technique is yes, and you reflect it back. So if we've got a picture, as we often do, of a wee baby sat in a big suitcase, and people start talking instantly, what's that baby doing in a bag? And I write, what's that baby doing in a bag? And someone else go, I don't know, I've never seen it before. And you build up and you build up and you reflect back. Everybody gets an affirmation of what they've said, and they start to see themselves and their words on the paper, or at the very least in me repeating it. And together we get momentum, and we've started and we're off. And then the banter starts, and then the laughter starts, and then somebody remembers a song. So if you ever get your hands on the book, and I recommend you do get your hands on the book from Alyson, The first time we did it, that April, we had a storytelling event, a presentation. So I stand up and I perform the stories. I project them behind me so everyone can see, and people start to recognize, even if they can't place the exact, I said that. Yeah, you did. That were you, were that. People start singing, the songs go in. In some of the photos, I think, in the presentation, as Alyson will continue after I've done this, there's pictures of me in a blue and white stripy top, and half the stories in this one particular care home had a song. There I am, the Cooper of Fife. And I don't know if you know it. There was an old Cooper who lived in Fife. Nickety, nackety, no, no, no. And somebody sang that to me, so I sang it back. Then everybody sang it. And then it turned up in every story we did, which was kind of fantastic. The Cooper of Fife was in it. So we had the first presentation, and then Alyson came to me again and said, do you know what? Can we do a book? And we'll do it on World Book Day. So I went back in, and the stories from the first round were there. We created some new stories and then presented it, but there was the book. And and I don't think you were very well, were you, Alyson? You turned up. Someone's knocking on my door. I can't believe it. You turned up quite poorly and said, I've got an idea. Can you do stories around the railway coming to Leven? As you charged off very poorly, not wanting to infect anyone. I said, yeah, go on then. And that was the next thing we did. So we had the presentation, we had this beautiful book, and then I went into the two homes that are based in Leven directly with a new set of photographs about trains and the Leven railway station, and we told stories for the return of the railway to Leven. And what we did then, because that event was outside and you couldn't rely on people being able to hear, so I put my artist thinking hat on and I thought, we'll make bunting. But then I thought, no, you need health and safety. We need to be able to lift the bunting out the way. And it was the process of doing that, I thought, washing. So we created a laundry line of stories for the railway, which I think there may be some pictures somewhere around. They certainly made it onto Twitter. And it was delightful. People came over and read the stories and walked in and out of it. And I think it speaks quite loudly to the culture of creativity in the Abbotsford care homes, but also for the efficacy and magic of this technique, because people instantly get ownership and they have choice of which picture, they have control over how the story runs. And literally everything they say makes it into the stories. And so it's that sense of empowerment as well, which is really, really important, that everything they think and say is underlined and goes in the story. There's no such thing as a wrong answer. Everybody's involved. If you want to sing, you can sing. If you want to put a picture in there. I mean, it didn't happen this time, but I've certainly done it where people want a little picture of, you know, a little wee stick man drawing of someone doing something. It's a fantastic technique, which, as I say, touch wood, all the rest of it, I've never seen it fail, because people love to have their own thoughts reflected back at them. And it's that affirmation. And no, but if memories come out brilliant, they're in the story, but actually we're all literally here in this very moment. So I think, does that work for a little rundown of how it goes?
No, definitely. Thank you for sharing that, Sarah. And I think that, like, Sarah's touched on a lot of points from our perspective, which we've found really, really worked with people. And I think that, you know, over time, and particularly working with people in dementia, you can sometimes be stuck in the rut of always doing reminiscence, of always trying, like, and actually for some people, reminiscence can be quite traumatic, or it can be quite difficult for them. So what I was really keen with a project like this was, like, how can we encourage people to engage in creativity and exploration and self-expression, but also have a product at the end of it that people could be proud of. And I think that was really testament so when we had the initial training session, we were wanting to get the buy-in of all the staff together before Sarah went out to the sites, because sometimes what can happen is that we have someone show up at a care home, they've got no idea of what's going to go on or what's going to happen, and everyone can be a bit like, not able to make the most out of the opportunities as they arise. So what we managed to do with Sarah coming into our centralized kind of office and delivering a training session, it just allowed her to have a bit of buy-in from the people that she was going to be working with at the care homes. And then as
sorry, I forgot to mention that it's incredibly important, because you could tell the difference that it made to the storytelling sessions. And it's that whole thing about creating that atmosphere and that buy-in from staff and residents alike, but also that magic. And I think, you know, it's key. And again, testament to the buy-in from Abbotsford, that we were allowed that half day to go in and run through how it works and what we need, because you can't have people wandering through or lots of different things, because a lot of it, and anyone who works with older people living with dementia, you don't want any distractions. It's that quiet concentration and magic that you create. So yeah, sorry about that, Alyson, forgot the
That's right. But I think it's just so kind of the process that we went through was kind of what it says here. We had the staff training session, then we had Sarah going around to all the homes to do an individual session, and the thing is, those sessions really weren't incredibly long, but it was all about sort of setting up the space, being with each other, and then what came out of that. And then again, when people saw their stories at our celebration event, they saw from their care home, there was cheers, there was, everyone, so not all of the residents from each care home could come to the celebration session, but a few people did, and they were really pleased and excited to be able to see their work on the screen. And then again, as I say, because there was such a positive reaction to the experience and people were talking about it. And again, what we heard from staff was that residents who have dementia, who were, not often able to remember what was happening for them, were continually talking about this positive experience that they had had, and sort of almost like recalling it quite regularly, when they came back from the event, still talking about it to the staff and still sharing that positive experience. And then so we did it all again, and obviously launched it with kind of bringing all those stories together in the book that had originally sparked Rosie's attention. So you'll see from the sessions there, obviously, all that's needed is a pen and a big piece of paper for everyone to carry around, and obviously the stimulating images that Sarah brought with her for the beginning of the conversation. But that's it. It wasn't particularly heavy on props or times or anything like that, and it wasn't too big. It could just happen, as you'll see in some of the pictures that are there, just in a living room space where people were interested and wanted to be involved. But it also meant that people who weren't interested in getting involved could sit back and could listen, and then would find themselves maybe not actively participating in the beginning, but further down the line would shout things out, and that would also be included. So yeah, this is what we ended up with. So that is our book, and we do have a few copies, and we managed to get a copy for every resident in our service. So every one of our residents was presented with a copy of the book for them to keep for themselves. And we've got a few spares, so if anyone is interested in having a copy of the book, then please do feel free to get in touch. And as I say, we've continued to use this, as Sarah had mentioned, this Timeslips process in other creative activities and spaces. So as you'll see, this is the picture Sarah was talking about, how the residents participated in a washing line of stories from celebrating the Leavenmouth rail link opening, and they were presented at the garden party that was there, and that's been picked up by some other people in local care homes as well, who are interested in taking the ideas forward. But yeah, what we have created is a book which I think probably is about 60 pages. It's a fair chunky piece there. And that contains every story that was written in every one of Sarah's sessions. So in some care homes, they wrote multiple stories during one session. Some care homes only did one story, a bit longer. There's a real variety. And the stories themselves almost look like poetry, and because they're just that very verbatim text written kind of line by line around that initial provocation or initial image that takes people's fancy. But residents really did enjoy kind of being able to have a read through the book, pick up bits here and there and take it forward with them. This was the testimonial for one of our staff members, Carla, who took part in the session, initially the training session, and then obviously there for the workshop. Now, I'm sure Carla won't mind me saying this, like, I never in a million years thought this would be up Carla's street. I was just not sure how staff would necessarily react to this kind of way of working, because it can be quite different from people. But Sarah has a fantastic way of involving everybody, and that included the staff, and encouraging them and motivating them to be involved and be part of it. And obviously this is just what Carla had to say about the project, and you can read it there, but just that the Timeslips workshop with Sarah was something extraordinary. To see our residents really engage with one each other over simple pictures and reminiscing about their lives was a pleasure to watch. Sarah listened to every word that was said and truly entertained us all. It was so nice to have a lovely afternoon and hear everyone's stories and smiles in the end. And Carla became a real advocate for this work and was really excited when Sarah came back and was around for that second time as well, and really kind of saw how it could be utilized to support residents to really be able to express their own creativity. So yeah, that's really all there is to say about our particular story and our books. The one thing I should mention is the person the person who's not with us here today at this presentation, because she's actually delivering another presentation somewhere else about something else, is Marianne, who was the person who brought together the book in its digital form, with bringing everything in line. And she created this image on the front using AI. So it's very much a kind of collaborative piece of creative work where we kind of put together all these things. So this was some of the images from AI that she had generated around kind of writing about what we had done in these events, and we just felt like this the energy in this image in particular was a beautiful way to capture the things that had come out of the conversations people had had. And yeah, so she was a big part of pulling the actual design of the book together. So a big thank you to Marianne as well, who was part of the project. But yeah, if you want to find more out about the stories and the things that we got up to at Abbotsford, and obviously the work that Sarah has been supporting us with in different ways over the last year or so, then please do follow us on, I call it Twitter, but X, if people are, I haven't quite gotten around to that changeover yet. But if you do want to follow us, then these are our kind of handles. So it's just myself, Ali McKechnie, which is very confusing because that is my maiden name. But yeah, Ali McKechnie or Sarah Alkins, and you'll be able to keep up to date with our different bits and bobs as we're going on. So yeah, we're kind of just open to questions now. If anyone has any questions that they might want to ask. Hope that's okay.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. It might be easier if we stop sharing the screen so that you can see kind of a bit more conversational for the questions. But thank you so much, Alyson and Sarah. It's, even knowing the project, it was still really lovely to be able to see how it all came together, and the kind of the energy that comes from the front cover and those images, I think is brilliant. I've got a couple of questions, but I'm going to let's see if anyone in the room has them first. So we'll go to Maureen first, if that's okay.
Yeah, good afternoon, and apologies for having my camera off. I was eating my lunch. So you were my lunchtime entertainment, and thanks, because it was really interesting. So I've got a few questions. One, I'll just give you the three of them. One is about, did you feel you needed to prompt people throughout to keep the stories going? How did the stories come to an end? Did they come to an end quite naturally, or do you need to fit some way in to bring them to an end? And the third one is, what's now? What's happening next?
Oh, well, Sarah, I'll let you answer those questions. The first two, I'll come in on the end.
Okay, oh good, because I'm looking at you. The thing about prompting, the way that it works is we have a look at the picture and you start to answer. And Anne Basting says this thing about beautiful questions. There's quite, because she is an American person, so there's quite a lot of let's ask some beautiful questions. But what she means is open questions, things that aren't sort of black and white, things that open the door. How do we think they're feeling? What can they see? What can they smell? And what's lovely about these questions is you can ask them in a setting with somebody in their everyday life. If they're looking out of the window and you see a bird, oh, I wonder what that bird's thinking. I wonder what they can see. So, but in this context, we're doing it in a picture, and the prompting comes with the repetition. And what happens is, because you do a little mini tale telling. So if you get a little gap, I go, oh, let's go back to the beginning. Let's see what we've got. And I've written on the top of the piece of paper the names of all our storytellers, first names. So we'll say, okay, this is a story by Rosalie, Cheryl, Maureen, Tricia, and Katie. And you start to perform it, and you get a bit of impetus going on, and you can rewind at any point and perform it again. And that kind of works as a prompt in that sense, because you've gone back to the beginning, and then you go, oh, we haven't got a title yet. Hang on a second, let's go back to the beginning. This is a story by Rosalie, Cheryl, Maureen, Tricia, and Katie, and Alyson, and you go through. And I've got one here, actually. I found this little laminated thing. And it does look like a prose poem. And we didn't have a title. So we went back to the beginning and go, what's a bairn doing in a bag? I can't place him. I see that many bairns. His face is familiar. I think I know him. I think it looks like a him. It does. He's going to have loads of fun. He's a smile on his face anyway. He's saying, I'm going to have fun. And basically, this story is amazing. They're all amazing, but I love this one because he got all over this bit. I don't know if you can see the bairn in the back. There he goes. And the numbers of people pick this one because he's just such a engaging little chap. But this one we called He's Still Smiling. So the prompt is built into the process. You go back to the beginning. And if you feel it dwindling, you go back and tell it again. Now, part of that process, of course, is knowing when it's going to end, because you don't drag it out. Some stories are short and swift. Some go on for, a long time. I mean, like this one, you didn't believe what this baby got up to. But the end thing, are we done? Have we got anything else to say? We've heard, and you go back over it and tell it and give it. It's all about the magic as well in the retelling. And Anne Basting talks about this quite a lot in terms of enchanting people. And it sounds a bit weird when you say it, and even weirder when you read it written on a piece of paper. When you're in a room full of people that are agog with what's going to happen next, you've got enchantment. So the end, because sometimes you go, is it finished? They go, yes, the end. So you're right, the end. And of course that creates laughter, and people love that because they've said it's the end, you've agreed, and it is the end. And that's empowerment and going, yep, you're in the driving seat, you're the writers. So, yeah, prompting and ending is all part of the retelling and the giving it a title. Yep. And what's next, please, Alyson?
Well, the opportunities, I think, from our perspective is like how well this process has worked for individuals and how people really engaged with it. I know obviously Trisha's here from one of our services. I'm sure she would be able to say how much her service enjoyed it. But I think the thing is, their opportunities are endless, and what we kind of went on to explore was we did the time slips using that initial kind of stimulus from the imagination kit that Sarah had, and then but we did already take that to the next step by saying, okay, I was obviously the Leave in Mouth reel link opening was coming, and I was like, oh, what could we do here? And I was like, right, well, who do I know that I could, because I didn't at that point have capacity myself to be like, right, okay, I want to go in and do a project, but I didn't have the opportunity to do that. And I was like, right, okay, I'm just gonna speak to Sarah and ask her if she can just go in and do the same sort of thing, but around this specific stimulus. And it was so easy, and she liaised directly with the care service, and it's really great because obviously Sarah as an artist is somebody who does really know how to operate in these spaces. And sometimes, coming from an artistic background as well and having lots of friends from the arts, it's sometimes a tricky balance because there are some people who work in the arts who think they know how to work in a care home environment, but actually don't have the complex skills that are really required. So to find somebody local who does was a really, really unique and perfect kind of collaboration. And we got on so well, and we like kindred spirits. There was so much that we had in common, that it just fit really well for our organization. And so I know now, kind of, if I'm like, oh, actually we haven't, why don't we, I'll give Sarah a call and I'll pick up. So really, what's next? Who knows? Opportunities are endless. I did try to encourage the partnership of Fife, and as part of the Fife Care Home Collaborative and the Fife Care Home Cooperative, to say that maybe we could instruct a Fife-wide project that would have Sarah going into care homes throughout Fife, not just ours, to develop something that represents our whole kind of county. So hopefully, fingers crossed, something like that might be able to come to fruition with the right people. So yeah.
And I think that it's really important because I've worked in quite a few different community environments, and I've seen, sadly, working in and around Leeds, people who go into community centres or care homes as artists and throw their weight around and expect everybody to wait on them hand and foot. And actually, it's completely unacceptable, and you have to respect. I mean, one of the things, of course, I'm going in there, I don't know all of these residents, the staff do. And that they're the experts in that environment, not me at all. And that respect for their skill and their knowledge is really important. And I think that's another reason why the storytelling worked as well as it did in that place, because I just said, you know your residents, the situation. And that was the first thing I said in the training, is that you are the expert in that context. And not because I'm brilliant or fantastic, it's because I've seen with my own eyes.
You definitely are brilliant and fantastic. That rolls
well, yes, I am. Thank you very much. But that realization came just watching people crash and burn so horribly by not having respect for the people that do this work day in and day out, So that, and I based all the training on the fact that people, what's going to work. And the thing that we do as well to try and fake it a little bit is everyone wears a sticker with their name on. So I start off by putting mine on. I'm Sarah, I'm wearing this. Can I ask you your name? And am I right to stick that on you? So that, again, with the prompting and the calling in, I can, say, Alyson, I thought you said something then, and call people in by name. And I'm not asking anyone to particularly remember my name either, because they've never met me before. So, So I think respect in that situation is key for everyone. There you go.
Thank you so much. I'm going to pass on to Cheryl, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you very much. Really, really inspiring. It's so fantastic to hear. Yes, I should be getting the book and possibly contacting Alyson for the book of your stories as well. Two things really. One, you mentioned there, Sarah, about having these sessions with the residents and whatever. And I guess the two things are really linked. One of the things that we've been trying to do recently is do more with Namaste, more with Playlist for Life, which is great. We've had training. We're really trying to do it. And I'm very, very aware we really need the buy-in of the staff, which you've mentioned. So although we're based in Edinburgh, we've got 2 care homes, a total of about 200 staff in total, but obviously just probably about half of those are care and nurses. But it kind of feels like herding cats sometimes, trying to get them on board and sort of dealing with things. And it's, would there be any sort of any tips you've got in the kind of best ways of doing that? And my other question is, would a kind of proper collaborative, even more collaborative with staff and relatives as well as residents be something that potentially could be used? Because we're really looking to try and involve everyone. It's not a case of this is your loved one and they're nothing to do with you. It's actually, and we have a lot of partners who don't live here, but their spouse does. And it would just be such a lovely thing to include them all together with that. So, that was my thing, but really inspiring. I'm just so glad that I logged on for it.
I think from my perspective, what I recognised worked really well with the staff is obviously, like, I had those very same conversations with Sarah when we met in that cafe, and I was like, I really just want people to get behind it. I'm not sure how, because putting people out there, they can sometimes feel uncomfortable with creative exploration that isn't, you know, their strength or their strong point. But I think what is really beautiful about the sessions, and I observed it through Sarah's training, but also through the recordings and things we have of the sessions, is actually in this setting, the staff become as much participants as they do, you know, leaders of it. And I think that really shifts and change, you know, so they don't feel a responsibility to drive the work necessarily, but because there's a facilitator, and obviously Sarah is a fantastic facilitator and she does that really, really well. But I think that if you have your sort of assigned facilitator, then having those other people who are in the room, they're not required to lead it, they're not required to do any of the work, but they're there just to be participants. And as I say, that's what struck me so much about Carla and Carla's engagement and involvement. You know, I never in a million years thought she would be the person that would be sort of celebrating this work, but she was just so in it herself. You know, she was like, oh, where's it going to go, what's going to happen? And she really kind of enjoyed it. She enjoyed being part of the session. And I think that, as I say, that is the real key to that kind of staff buy-in. And I think you're entirely right that this work does not have to happen just with people with dementia. This work could happen with your staff. This could happen with your grandkids. Like, imagine a day, an intergenerational day with grandchildren and grannies, and you know, having a really open session that says we're going to do some storytelling work and then everyone creates something. But I think for me, the biggest part of all of this work is actually the satisfaction of a product at the end of it, you know, and that's like the satisfaction of a product of a story, or the satisfaction of that we took that the stage further with the book. But like, it's all about having something at the end of it, because I think a lot of the time we can have events or experiences where someone comes in, they do something, they leave, and there's no legacy of what it was that we did together, and so it gets forgotten or it gets left behind. But actually having those really tangible things that come from it allows everyone to be like, oh yeah, I was in that session with Sarah when we made that story, and we're now displaying that story on the front in our front hallway, and people know that we created this from the session that we worked together. So yeah, there's lots of ways. Like, I think it automatically brings people in that you would probably never expect. And I wonder, Trisha might be able to say a bit about that, because she obviously the sessions took part in one of her care homes as well.
Hi there. Yes, we were very fortunate to have Sarah, and I think, like everybody else, probably thinking, oh my goodness, what is this going to be like? How are we going to facilitate this? How is it going to work? Much as we've discussed already, how are we going to engage the staff? Who's going to be confident enough to sit with residents? And then that question of, what residents do we choose? Do we only pick residents who are able to communicate really well and be able to express themselves? Or do we have a bit of a mixed bag? And we decided on a mixed bag, and we had one very confident staff member and a couple of staff members who weren't so confident. But what was awesome about it was everybody engaged. And where my office is, they actually used our Bruce Lounge, which is above me, and the laughter and the giggling and everything that we could hear in the office, as well as on the floor, was like, it was just phenomenal. People were so empowered, they were so engaged. I think, as you know, Alyson touched on it earlier, they felt valued. So even if they were only able to say a couple of words or a sentence, that was written down, that was documented, what they said was there. So that made them feel, you know, part of it. And then also having something at the end, because we do many projects at Abbotsford, sorry Alyson, but we do. She's got us engaged in so much, it would make your head spin. But sometimes there is that, oh, we've done that project, we've got lovely pictures, we've posted it on, you know, our Facebook pages and Twitter and things, and then it's kind of like, all right, we've done that. But to actually have the book at the end of it, to be able to give that to relatives, to be able to show that to people who took part, and then relatives were thinking, oh gosh, I wish I'd come to that. I wish I'd known it was going to be like that. I would have engaged in that. So, you know, for future, it makes us think, how can we get that out there? How can we engage everybody? But we thoroughly enjoyed it. It was fabulous. And we'd love to have Sarah back again. It was amazing. So it's worth a try. If you're thinking about it remotely, just do it. Just do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting you should say that, because it is that the legacy thing that Alyson referred, I've written it down because that's what it is. And that process that you referred to, Tricia, that sort of revolving door, we're back on the pavement outside and it's all what happened there. There's always something tangible with this, even if it's just the performance of the story at the end of the session. But then the other thing that I do every single time, I've got all this flip chart stuff, is that I will write it out and email it to the home, so that if obviously your staff can't, because people were, bless them, taking photos of the pictures and saying, I'll write it. And I'm like, no, that's what I'm here for. I will write this up, email it back to you. And I think this is where it became clear we've got a book on our hands, just simply because of the sheer volume of stories. I mean, there was the home which is out on the edge of Tayport, that one.
Oh, Newborough, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one.
Tayside View, yeah.
Couldn't stop them. We had 5. These women were just on fire. It was amazing. But another times, a bit more low key. There was one where, a lot of it is in the timing of the session and also the timing of how people are feeling on that day. We had one day where bowels were an issue. And I think we all know what that feels like. You cannot concentrate on a story if what you really want to do is go to the loo. And so we managed to get one story about lovesick penguins, and then it was a mass exodus to the bog. And that's how it works, And I think the other thing is, come one, come all. You don't have to have dementia to enjoy this storytelling process, but it helps. But we also had, it does work with children. I've done it just with.
Well, and I remember that's what we did for the celebration event. We tied it around, not around storytelling week, actually. It was around intergenerational week last year.
That was the one.
And we brought kids to the celebration event, so there was a nursery group that came along and listened to the stories, and as I say, they enjoyed the storytelling that Sarah was doing as much as that. So there was lots of different opportunities to be involved in things, but I think as well, I'm quite lucky that I do have a staff team, as Trisha sort of alluded, that are really willing to just try anything and everything I decide to throw at them. So yeah, it may be that we have quite an open and receptive group already, in all of the homes, but I do think it is testament to the way that it works, that it's really quite organic and easy for people to feel confident and comfortable with quite quickly. It's not too wacky.
We've all got and all the staff as well, because obviously the staff have got their name badges on anyway, but we would all have the sticker, so we'd all got the sticker with these first names, so there was no difference between staff, resident, storyteller, manic, woman with biro at the flip chart. We were all at the same level. There was one gorgeous one, and I won't use names, but I think there's a gentleman who writes stories. His wife, who isn't a resident, writes them up for him, and she was there the day that I first came writing up these stories, and she sort of sat at the back of the room. She said, oh no, don't worry about me, I'll be doing this. And it was great. As we told the story and her husband became more animated within the process, her head went up, and I thought, I've got you. And the next thing, she's putting bits in, Alice. It was fantastic. And she was sort of gone from, oh no, don't worry about me, I'm not here to interfere with what you're doing, to being a participant, but such an eager cheerleader for it. And she was actually at the garden party with her husband for their thing, and she was and such an asset to the process, although she's not a resident. And her initial reaction was, oh, don't worry about me, I'll be fine here. There was no stopping her. She was fantastic.
I'm going to ask a question that's, unless anyone else wants to find a question, but I might steal the opportunity, because it's been a fantastic discussion and talk. So thank you so much, and your passion for the topic really comes through as well, which I think is so important, because it makes you excited then to try it and to explore it. And I'm already thinking I'd love to look at doing this with pictures about research and what would come out for people, because it's such a normally quite a sterile clinical world, and actually this is such a different way to look at it. And when we're looking at how we involve people in rich voices and how we involve people in care and research, so much of what we need to do is change the image of what we think of as research, and it's so brilliant to look at these creative methods. So I'm going to bank that for a future discussion with you. But I suppose a practical question then that kind of comes from that interest is, what do you think the biggest challenges would be for care homes to take on this approach with their residents and family?
I mean, obviously that the thing I know that's obviously very present for a lot of care home providers in particular is just obviously the costs involved. You know, and the costs are not extraordinary by any measure. We're really only paying for Sarah's time and you know, she's very valuable. It's very good value for money. But it was you know, that in itself, it is an additional cost. You know, I'm not going to lie, we fronted the cost of all of this. There's nothing, you know, we haven't sourced any money to fund the project. We just went ahead with it. And obviously from that, we paid for the printing of the book costs and all of that sort of stuff as well. So funding and costing always comes up as something that I think people have to be really aware of if they're going to engage in this style of thing. But I think that, you know, in that sense, it sounds really like kind of cliched and a bit kind of like, oh, it's all brilliant, but it really was. It wasn't hard work. It wasn't challenging. It wasn't like, oh God, we've got to think about you know, going to this place, or oh, you know, Sarah. It was really, really easy to just kind of like have an idea, have an ambition. I think really we met in person that one time, and then by then we had like scoped out the whole project, and we're like, right, this is what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
And I think that's because, again, from the background that we both come from, you know, that's how you do it. You get an idea, you do the work, and you see what comes of it. And I think that in that sense, that very first time we did it was almost like people, I think, might get in their heads of trying to do like an improvement project and make this a thing and like, you know, put all this stuff behind it. But actually, sometimes you just got to have an idea and try. And really that's what we did. And I think that impetus of us both being quite kind of doers is just to go out there and just do the work, that actually the challenges were pretty minimal. The coordinating with the care homes as to when was the best time for people to arrive obviously becomes a bit of a difficult thing to just make sure we're coordinating everyone at the same time and at the right time for what works for the home. But I think as Sarah's already kind of demonstrated, her willingness to be flexible around what was going on that day or what was the needs of the service were really make the whole project and the whole thing work very, very easily and very, very smoothly. And I think if other care homes want to take on the use of like Timeslips or think about how they could do similar storytelling projects, it's about finding and having confidence in the person that you're supporting to be the facilitator. Because obviously it works really well that Sarah has that background, she's trained, she's certified and so on. But I suppose, like she's kind of explained, the techniques of what you're doing is nothing rocket science. You know, it is very straightforward and it's very simple. So anyone could be that facilitator, but I suppose they've got to feel confident and want to do the work and want to be in that environment to do it. So yeah, I don't know about you, Sarah, if you've got anything else, but I think really there was not much challenging in the process, which is just what's so easy about it and so simple. Like it just works and it works really well and people love it.
It was logistics a lot of the time because of staffing and the different shifts that people are on. So you might talk to one person one day, but that's about keeping a good diary, not freaking out because you're not talking to the same person every day, understanding that everybody is stretched to the max. And it's like, you know, not surprising that some things slip. To me, the biggest challenge of the whole thing, just doing it at all, not in terms of Abbotsford or anything particular, is finding that space where you were going to be undisturbed for an hour. And if you've got that, well, say an hour, it might be 20 minutes. People might need the loo. And then that's our space. And you create that little bit of wonder and everyone who's coming in, and that there is nothing that anyone can throw at you that won't work with this, because you're going in to tell the story and you've got these beautiful pictures and everything's going to be lovely. And apart from anything else, we're going to have a right laugh. And I think that's how you do it and that's how you create it. It was an utter joy from start to finish. And I occasionally, as I say, flick through the stories and just start laughing again because they're genuinely hilarious.
The thing is, I think like
Yes.
what we've demonstrated in the whole kind of project, I suppose, is you could do this as big or as small as you want. So what we did was we had obviously 7 homes, because that's what was in our group, and we went around all of them. So that in itself was a big start off. Then we had a celebration event. Now, you don't have to have a celebration event. You could just come back again to the care home and say, here's the story. But we added that on as like an extra thing. So the facilitation of that in terms of like bringing everyone together, and the room was crammed. It was packed. We have our own kind of we have our own training room at Abbotsford, and honestly, I don't think we could have fit any more people in if we tried. Like everyone was, and the energy in the room was just fantastic. I think we had everyone singing Mamma Mia at one point, didn't we, with the mics, which was quite good.
Because somebody suggested ABBA, and then what happened round the room was people just started remembering all these ABBA songs. So we basically had one story that started off as one thing and then just became a list of ABBA songs. And because of the way the technique works, you write it down and you put little musical note. I don't think there's any singing in this one. What were they thinking? Anyway, little music notes around it. So when you tell the story, you have to sing the song. And sometimes, I think it was ABBA, they didn't stop singing. I think we might have got all the way through Mamma Mia.
Yeah, well, we did.
When we wrote the song, it was the first 4 lines, but yeah, that's good. We can do that. We can sing ABBA.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, as I say, what really comes across is how much fun it was, but also that underlying, I think you said earlier, respectful collaboration and respecting what everyone brings to the table, what everybody brings to the room, and people feeling seen and heard, and how important that is. We know from EPI work in other areas, we've done writing and books and things, and just having that platform and seeing yourself in a tangible way of being heard, I think is amazing. And I do fully recommend anyone who hasn't already looked through the book to have a look, because it stays out on my desk all the time now, because it just makes me smile every time I see it. And it makes me think, how can we build on what we do from a research side in terms of those relationships, and making sure that the voices of people who maybe normally wouldn't get involved in the research but might actually get involved almost indirectly, and that being hopefully a positive experience. So I think there's so much that could be done with all this. But as I say, I'm so grateful that you were able to join us today, and those of you who are able to join the call as well, thank you so much. We will be putting this online, and if any additional questions come in from either those of you that are on the call or anyone from the online recording, we will obviously share those with you and feedback, any answers on that. We don't have a webinar planned for next month, just because people are here, there and everywhere with holiday season. It doesn't feel very holiday-like right now. It is absolutely tipping it down with rain and sterling. But we will be back with a Partners in Research seminar webinar, and then we will be bringing in a Rich Voices organisation again. But yeah, that's, I think, everything that I needed to cover. But as I say, thank you so much. It was so enjoyable, and I think we're all going to go away feeling excited about